You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, almost Merry Christmas to you, buddy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Need the positivity coming here, but we've had a little bit of frustration trying to get going today. I'm back home for the holidays with my parents' place trying to use their computer, and it's not picking up my mic. It's not doing anything, so we are doing what we can to bring you our episodes. I'm happy about Christmas, but gosh darn it, I think if it falls on a Wednesday, we should just, change things. It needs, like, Thanksgiving's always on a Thursday. Let's just make it a Monday or Friday.
There you go. I'm good with that. I guess I'd rather have it be a Friday just because then I'd have Christmas Eve on Sunday. So then I'd have service in the morning, service in the evening. That'd be a long day, and probably wouldn't have any time for football. So that would be a little disappointing. Obviously, love watching some football, and it's kind of a bittersweet week. This is last week of Bronco football until next, well, I guess you could say August with preseason, but really September for real meaningful football. So it's kind of a fun week, but not a fun week at the same time.
Yeah, definitely, but this is going to be a really exciting, fun off season. So I'm just excited to be here doing it and being here to talk about it with you and to everybody who's listening. So the season is ending, but it's going to be a fun off season as well.
It is. I had somebody went to dinner with some people last night, and they asked my wife, aren't you excited that the football season is ending, that you'll get your husband back? And she started laughing. She goes, yeah, that's not happening.
She knows better.
Yeah, she
Football
does.
season goes until April.
Yes, that's what I told him. I said, actually, January to April is maybe our busiest time with our podcast. So very excited that that's getting ready to come up. And so make sure that you're following us on Twitter because we're going to be talking lots and lots of Bronco football. I've seen you've been talking about mock drafts left and right, telling people what you think of their mock drafts. And it seems like a lot of people seem to agree with you on a lot of how the Broncos should go. A lot of group things.
The gosh darn echo chamber. Yeah.
So, it's easy to see where the Broncos have some needs, but no, it is. It's going to be a fun time. So make sure you can find me on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. You can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod, and make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, well, Broncos coming off another big-time victory over a bad team. I think most of us predicted the Broncos would win that game, but Broncos looked pretty darn good considering that they started out so terrible in that game. And so we have our stock report here for the Broncos, and just a lot of good. That's always the fun part after a victory is the stock up part's a little bit easier to figure out, and it's a little bit harder to figure out the stock down, obviously, and that's what we want. But Nick, who was your first stock up from this past game against the Lions?
Well, for me, it has to be DaeSean Hamilton. He's been a guy that was excited when the Broncos drafted him, thought his route running was something that would really translate, and never really thought he was going to be a number one, but thought he could be an okay number two. And so far throughout his career, that has not been the case. Whether it be Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, blah, 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 Hamilton really just hasn't lived up to it. Now, granted, 4th round pick, those guys, how much they hit, to what extent, that varies, but 6 receptions, 65 yards, 10.8 off there by decimal yards per reception and a touchdown. He really did probably one of the best games of his career, at least since week 16, week 17 last year. So DaeSean Hamilton, I'm still not sure he is enough of an explosive playmaker that you want him as that number 2 option. But as a number 3 and number 4, a guy who can come in and fill some slot role, go out there also, hats off to a lot of those receivers and the tight ends blocking. But Hamilton overall, best game I can remember in a while. He was a big part of this offense. And, we talked about it coming into it that the Lions cornerbacks outside of their cornerback number one were absolutely dreadful, and the Broncos should target that way just because, attack where they're weak. And they did that. And I thought Patrick would be the guy who would step up, and Patrick still had a great game. But Hamilton, really good game. Definitely stock up. He has a spot on this team. The Broncos are going to have a chance to push him down the depth chart next year, add some talent, which they probably should still look to do. But still, you need depth at wide receiver, running 3 different, 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers out there. And how much you rotate those guys anyway. You need a good set of weapons out there at wide receiver. But Hamilton, stock up for sure. I thought, really just a positive game for him going forward.
He helped me. We talked about Broncos win if, and I'd said if a receiver other than Fant or Sutton were able to go over 50 yards. And so when he went over 50 yards on our game log, I said Broncos win this game. And I think that was when they were tied at that point. But I just knew, okay, yep, that's all it took. And you're right. He had a pretty good game. He did really well at knowing when to kind of slow down, because the Lions played a ton of zone coverage.
Yes, they did.
And, for a young quarterback, that's usually what you try to do, because you want to have them try to make a mistake, think they could fit it into a window that they probably shouldn't be trying to. And Hamilton did a great job of really sitting down in those zone spots, giving Locke a really nice target to throw to, making some tough catches. Just really, this game set up well for him. That's what he is good at, is being smart on the field. And really, the tough catches part hasn't been his game this year. But beyond that, it did. It set up well. He did great blocking, like you said. That's such an underrated quality of what the Broncos brought this last game. Just one of their best overall games that we've seen from the offensive side of things. Run game's going, pass game's going, just everything worked out well. But my first stock up, I'm going to go opposite side of the ball. I'll go Draymond Jones. And, I think it's getting to a point of this might end up being the best rookie class the Broncos have ever had. But no, this rookie class has just been outstanding, top to bottom. Noah Fant looks like the best rookie tight end in football. I know Hawkinson getting hurt kind of made that a little bit an easier task for him, but still, he's looked like the explosive athlete the Broncos wanted him to be, and he seems to be only getting better as the season goes. Obviously, Drew Lock looking like the future at the quarterback position, at least for 2020. You got Dalton Reisner, who unfortunately had to sit out the game for part of it, but looks like a solidified starter on that offensive line for years to come. And then you got Draymond Jones here. Comes in, has 4 tackles, 3 solo, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 2 quarterback hits. Now some of that was coverage. I will say that. Or other guys getting to the quarterback and the quarterback stepping right into Draymond Jones. But I really don't want to take too much away from Draymond Jones, because it was a great game. He was getting in the backfield. He was doing pretty well in the run game. It wasn't perfect by any means, but again, he's a little bit smaller for a defensive end. He's a rookie, so he's going to have his struggles here and there. But for a rookie to come in there and have a game like that, just outstanding play. Very, it would shock me if he's not one of the starters next year.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who is trending up, and I thought he did better in the ground game than I thought. It's still, not the best part of his game. He's not the most massive guy, and that's always going to be an issue with him in the run game. But his ability to get after the passer, and he looks, maybe it's because he wore number 85 in college too, but he looks more filled out wearing that number 93. So I really thought he had a great game. I saw when you did this outline that you had Jones as a guy who was worth mentioning here, and I definitely agreed with you. He had a heck of a game, and even if he's more, that first guy off the bench next year, he's going to find plenty of snaps, because he was really, really good. And, you can even go into next year with Draymond Jones as one of the defensive ends and Mike Purcell as a nose tackle, and then have Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris opposite him. You can live with that. Not the best, obviously not a unit that's going to be filled with Pro Bowlers. You probably like a little bit more talent there, but that's true when you look at any team's roster. So really excited about Draymond Jones. And like you were talking about, if the Broncos can hit as hard as they've hit on those first 4 picks, all the picks in the rounds 1 through 3, that can really complement that 2018 class and be something that really catapults his team forward. Young guys that are trending up, and guys that are still under contract and just getting better. I mean, that's exciting. That's what you want. That's what a team finishing, Broncos 6-9 right now, maybe 7-9. You're not going to the playoffs, but if you can have two young draft classes like that are really not only just getting playing time because it's a bad roster, but showing flashes, showing that they belong in this league and getting better. I mean, it's hard not to be excited about the overall picture of this team. Stock down for me, though. Again, like you talked about, not too much stock down here, but I'm going to go Elijah Wilkinson. He had the penalty in this game. He was not the best game for him, but really it was as much about Jake Rogers coming in, some other guys coming in and playing well for him. And I do want to say, Morris, the left guard, as well came in. I saw some people kind of talking down about Reisner, probably just being more contrarian than anything because Reisner, the hometown kid, people like to gas him up. But Reisner hasn't been the same since he had that ankle injury, so I think that's a bigger thing. But Wilkinson just been consistently not great for us. And him going out, granted, not the best defense for the Lions, but I thought that him going out, Jake Rogers came in, there was not much of, if any, difference. So I'd go stock down on Wilkinson just because the third string, between him and the third string, not seeing much difference to me meant that, how great is he? How much does he need? More does he need to be pushed? So I thought that was worth pointing out. And again, a win, not going to rain on anybody's parade too hard.
Yeah, and my stock down is a guy that really, it's one play that stood out. Devontae Booker. There in that first quarter, third down, perfect setup. A great play design to get him open for a big play on third down, perfect throw, and Booker drops it. And that's supposed to be the one thing he is really good at. I guess he is a good pass blocker, so I don't want to take that away from him. But it's still, that's what he was supposed to be able to come into the game and do. And when he has limited opportunities, it just shines all the more when he makes a mistake. And
that makes sense.
And it just shows also, the Broncos, one of the biggest things they've had with Locke is that first quarter momentum. And so then to kill that momentum right off the bat, it really gave the Lions just that little glimpse of hope that maybe they could win this game. And thankfully the Broncos didn't allow one bad drop to destroy their team. Got to give the Broncos credit that they didn't quit and go, well, it's just not our day. But Booker, again, just showing probably not a part of this roster in 2020. For a third string running back, he's not terrible. I think people dog on him a little more than they should, but at the same time, you still want a little bit more from that position. Especially the Broncos need a receiving running back. And right now, there's just nobody on this roster that fits that role. And again, Devontae Booker, he usually has pretty good hands, so it's just kind of surprising to see him drop that one. But again, one play when you have so few limited reps is why he ends up here on this stock down.
Yeah, definitely a good call. I agree with you there. And like the piece I wrote about a little bit ago, last week, the Broncos really need to find some sort of output from their running backs in the receiving game. And I'm not sure if it's just the nuance that Phillip Lindsay lacks there. You think the smaller, twitchier, fast guy, he's going to be a great receiver. Hasn't translated that way. And I remember you saying when you were out watching the Broncos practice in the summer that Lindsay was struggling to bring in the ball and catch it cleanly. And that's an issue for him. And Royce Freeman is just, he got 2 targets, 9 yards, 4.5 yards a carry. So did Phillip Lindsay, the exact same stat line. But they need more from the running back in the passing game. And it's unfortunate. Broncos obviously brought in Phillip Lindsay, who's been incredible for them as a runner. But, man, if they could only have brought in, I believe, undrafted free agent also the year before, an Austin Eckler to complement this offense. That's exactly what you're looking for as far as that underneath guy that, even if it's just a dump off, they can do something with. And just they don't have that right now. So that's been a disappointment for me. And I think it's just such an important area of this offense. It's not as important as finding a legitimate wide receiver 2, maybe not even as important as a better all-around, like a wide tight end for 12 personnel, but gosh, they really do need that guy to bring more in the receiving game, and that's probably something they're really going to be looking for this offseason when Devontae Booker leaves, and they obviously brought in Theoretic. Maybe they'll bring him back, but definitely a niche that this offense needs. Stock up for me, speaking of Phillip Lindsay. Good game from Phillip Lindsay, and part of it is the blocking as well, but 19 carries, 109 yards, 5.7 yards a carry and a 27 long. Hat tip also to the Broncos. I feel like we're talking about the offensive line and how they played pretty well, but got to give credit too to the receivers and Noah Fant. Also, Noah Fant, not the best inline blocker, but he actually does a pretty good job of hitting targets in space and kind of crackback blocking, across the line of scrimmage. And Tim Patrick, DaeSean Hamilton, Courtland Sutton, those guys get after it at the second level. And when you have wide receivers and a tight end that can block at that second and third level or on the boundaries like that, that's how you get those explosive run plays. The offensive line, you just need that one where they break through and then you have a chance to take it, 27 yards like Phillip Lindsay did. So,
you forgot somebody. Andrew Beck was in on both rushing touchdowns.
Yes, and Andrew Beck. Yes, who, man, did they pay Andy Janovich too soon? Maybe.
Well, I love, how much I love Janovich, partly because he looks a little bit like me. Partly because he and I have a lot of things in common of loving hunting and all those kind of things. But Beck is maybe showing fullback is one of those positions you don't usually pay.
Yeah.
You can have a guy that can come in that is more of a tight end than a fullback. I mean, Beck's getting better with each week because he's still learning the fullback position. And
he just looks more nuanced and smooth as a receiver.
Right.
Personally.
Right. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess it's maybe a good thing to have that because fullbacks seem to get injured a lot.
And specifically Janovich.
Right. And so at least having two guys that you can move around a little bit, the versatility of Beck to be able to be tight end or fullback, whichever one you need. I mean, that's a huge advantage for the team to be able to have a guy like that on the field. So, I mean, maybe it's not that bad, but it's still kind of maybe they spent money where they didn't need to.
Yeah. Definitely think about that. I thought about that a little bit yesterday, but again, Phillip Lindsay, good game. I think he's really close to 1,000 yards now, and that'll be great if he can get that 1,000 yards. Another thing that you can hang your hat on in a season, even though it's a losing season, that the Broncos have another 1,000-yard rusher in Phillip Lindsay. So I thought it was a good game for him, and hats off to the offensive line. I mean, the whole blocking system was great, especially in that second half of the game. So, Drew Lock didn't have the best statistical game, but that's because he was able to play, game manager, and doesn't always have to be a gunslinger. If you can control the game like that, beautiful, more power to you.
Right.
And Phillip Lindsay has 958 yards, so just needs a total of 42 more yards to break that 1,000-yard mark, and I think he'll be able to get that against the Raiders. So, awesome.
For sure. Well, I'm going to go, and I guess I should really just talk about the entire offensive line. I mean, I have Jake Rogers here on our sheet, and he had an outstanding game considering he's third string tackle and coming in there for Elijah Wilkinson, who was struggling a little bit before he got hurt. And Rogers comes in and just did an incredible job. I remember just wanting to watch this guy and going, man, every time he is just stalling the defensive end edge guy trying to come off the edge there. And I was very impressed with his work. I had somebody ask me earlier, if Wilkinson is healthy, who do you start? And part of me would like to see Jake Rogers just because I do think that he might be that swing tackle for the Broncos next year. And getting him those extra reps could be a really good thing for the Broncos. But no, he did. He looked long. He looked very technically sound in what he was trying to do on the field. Did well in the run game as well. But really, like I said, the entire offensive line deserves a shout out in this one. Whenever you can rush for over 100 yards like they did, I think they were close to 150 yards, weren't they?
Yes.
And then, no sacks.
According to Fangio.
Yeah, no sacks. And really, Locke, there's been other games where he's been either not sacked or just sacked once. And you're going, wow, he did a really good job of manipulating the pocket, moving around, making guys miss. This is one of those, he just stood back there. He had all day to throw on a lot of those throws. And so it wasn't just that Locke was escaping. It was that the offensive line was actually holding up and doing their job, especially in that second half. That's why they were able to get consistently, 5 straight scoring drives for the offense. That was a big part of the offensive line doing their job, doing it consistently, and just making Locke feel very comfortable in that pocket. And such a great bounce back game. Everybody's talking about Locke having a bounce back game. The offensive line, after getting humiliated there by the Chiefs, for a second time this year to come back and have a game like that. And we talked about it on the preview podcast that yes, Detroit was not a great defense and their defensive line was not great at getting after the quarterback, but it's still, you got to give them credit for what they did. They did their job. And so I have to give really the entire offensive line a stock up for what they did on the field.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. He had a good game, and there's no doubt about it. And there's a reason that Wilkinson was on the stock down. It has as much to do with Jake Rogers being on the stock up. But let's be real, small sample size, so we'll see. Everything with a grain of salt there. Right. Stock down for me. This is more just because he didn't have the best game, really not an efficient game. And there's a couple plays where the guy across from him just made plays better than him, and that's Courtland Sutton. 5 receptions on 10 targets and 8.2 average along a 15. He's still the number one weapon, and the Lions were definitely not great elsewhere, so the Broncos didn't have to go to that well constantly. They didn't have to depend on Sutton in that regard, but you still want to see Sutton win some, and Darius Slay, a really good cornerback, borderline top 10. He's right around that area, and Slay gave him issues. Slay was making plays, and you stock down just because Sutton was so high for me. I still think, it's not a big deal. He went from 92 on Madden to now 89. Oh no, he's still a great wide receiver one, a young, awesome player. And it's great to see the Broncos can go elsewhere when Sutton is being covered up by another team's best option on their rolling coverage and whatnot. Just attention over to him, but I still think it's worth noting Sutton, not his best game, and hopefully they will be better going forward.
All right. Well, my last stock down here is Tom McMahon. If there's a coach that's going to lose his job on this staff, that's who it's going to be. Just coverage units have not been great this year. Wadman has been about as up and down as any punter. Really more down than up. And even though McManus is having a pretty good year and has been much better as the season has progressed, that's not enough to save his job. And I always hate to say somebody should lose their job. Nobody deserves to lose a job, but, I shouldn't say that. There's plenty of people that have done things to lose their job. But again, it's a matter of you're trying to get the best out of this team. And if special teams is holding this team back every week, there's got to be a change somewhere. And I think it probably has to be there at the top.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. He's a guy who needs to be on the hot seat. Another game where the Broncos special teams almost choked away this game, and really special teams, it doesn't get the attention like offense or defense, but if you're constantly losing in the special teams battle, you're behind the 8 ball. That means you have to win on offense and defense. That's just too hard. You can't be losing so constantly on special teams. So definitely agree with you there. Stock up for me on this last one. Really, the Broncos offensive line in that second half was awesome, but shout out to Patrick Morris and Mike Munchak. They brought him over. They claimed him off the Steelers, and he's an interesting player because he's not the biggest. At least he wasn't with his pro day. I have the measurements here from his pro day coming into the league. 6'2" and an 1/8, so smaller for an offensive lineman. Weight 295, and these are all unofficial measurements because it wasn't the NFL Combine. But so that's what we have. So he's a little bit smaller, but the athletic package which he has, again, grain of salt because it was a pro day and not the actual NFL Combine where it's much more standardized and rigor. Standards to uphold those measurements, but 40-yard dash of 509, but it's really the other athletic scores that are just insane. I'm looking at his mock draftable spider graph right now. That vertical jump of 36 inches, which is the 99th percentile of interior offensive linemen. Broad jump of 117 inches, 98th percentile. They had 3-cone drill of 7.39 seconds, 91st percentile. 20-yard shuttle of 4.38 seconds, 96th percentile. 37 reps on the bench. They do not have his arm length here, so I'm a little questioning that because obviously the shorter arms, the easier it is to put up more reps. We see that pretty constantly with offensive linemen. But 37 reps, 97th percentile. So this is an interesting guy. I am very curious to see what this team does with Patrick Morris going forward. Obviously, Connor McGovern had a pretty good game too. He had a couple bad series where Snacks Harrison made him look a little bit foolish, put him on the ground. But Patrick Morris, interesting player. That size profile, whatnot, projects, I would say, more towards center, especially in a zone scheme. What an athlete. But I think probably won't see that this year just because snap communication and chemistry is so important, and you're not going to want to throw that variable in there for Locke, even if it is the last game of the season. But really interesting, athletic package and potentially a dude going forward. they climbed off waivers. Munchak has an eye for talent, so I'm very intrigued.
I like it. Well, I'm going to go back to the edge rush, or just the defensive line getting after the quarterback here. I'm going to go Jeremiah Attaochu for my final guy here on the stock up. And just, he's only signed for this season. But this is a guy that I think the Broncos would be smart to actually be aggressive in getting him signed for another 2 to 3 years. He's been such a star. I mean, it's not that he's just been a nice guy coming off the bench. He's been a true star on this defense. And, I mean, another sack added. I think he has 3 sacks over the last 3 games, had another couple quarterback hits. There's a couple times on the broadcast, I don't know if you heard this, but they kept going, was that Von Miller or Jeremiah Attaochu?
Yeah.
And
Attaochu's the one who looks way longer.
Yeah. But, I mean, when you're having to ask, which one is it? That's a pretty huge compliment that this guy is getting. And so, again, just to keep that edge rush depth really, really strong, he would be a huge guy to add. And it just looks like a unit that we really questioned coming into the season. How are the Broncos going to do, especially then when Bradley Chubb went down? Really, the Broncos have shown that they have some pretty darn good depth. Justin Hollins has had his flashes every once in a while. Attaochu coming in, obviously. Malik Reed had another sack in this game. And so it's looking like a much better unit than maybe what we thought at the beginning of the season. Just because young guys have really stepped up. And a guy like Attaochu, I mean, who is really, I mean, he's bounced around the league. I'm trying to think of all the teams that he has been on in his career.
He was a second-round pick by the Chargers, I believe.
He was.
So always talent.
Yeah, there's always some hope that he could turn into some. Chargers for 4 years, and then the Jets in 2018, and now the Broncos. He was signed by the Chiefs at one point as well, and then they cut him. And so, again, a guy that just bounced around, seemed to find his place here in Denver. Kind of makes me think of Shelby Harris a little bit. A guy that bounced around the league, that came to the Broncos, found a role for him and used him to his strengths. And all of a sudden they began to blossom. So big shout out to him, having another great game for the Broncos. Just really makes that defensive line something to fear moving forward.
Yeah, and his star rising has also come with, even though he had a couple splashes in this game, I feel like it's kind of, he has eclipsed Malik Reed, if that makes sense. Now Malik Reed, undrafted free agent, but Attaochu, I mean, I'm not sure what his market is going to be looking like this offseason. I believe he will be a free agent, but he's somebody I would very much hope to bring back as that third edge rusher behind Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, because obviously Chubb coming back, but you need those bodies. So I've been very impressed with them. Also, last stock up for me, those Broncos color rush uniforms. I don't love all the orange with the pants and the socks and everything, but the uniform design, maybe they could do something with the side stripe as well going on, and the helmet, A+. I love it. Chef kisses fingers, whatever you want to say. I'm all about those uniforms. I love the color rush design and the general premise of just the layout of them. They're gorgeous.
Yeah. I think my favorite is the helmets.
The helmets are great.
Yeah. Just, I don't mind obviously the horse, but really just that D, that's what the Broncos have been for so long.
It's so clean.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, especially against those helmets and then those color rush jerseys. That orange just really pops, and that's why my favorite Bronco jersey I have is a Von Miller color rush jersey.
Ah, nice.
And I got that one. You remember that sponsor we had at one time where they would rent out jerseys?
Yes.
That's where I got it from when they were going at a sale, and so I got it for like $20 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
one of my best
deal.
purchases I've made.
Nice. All right, well, we should probably take a break here, folks. We will be back in a second. Do not go anywhere. This is Building the Broncos.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick, along with Carl. Folks, if you hear a little bit of barking in the background, I just got family in town from New York City. They have a dog with them. They live up the Hudson a little bit, but apologize if there's any barking or borking in the background. Just some doggos stretching their legs in the backyard. So just want to get that out of the way. But yeah, definitely an exciting win, seeing the Broncos come off, Drew Lock guaranteed now to be at least 3-2, potentially 4-1 as a starter. And man, hope feels really good. And we don't want to put too much on this game. The Lions are an absolute trash heap right now. They're injured. They're just not good. 3-11-1. I mean, that is absolutely disgusting. They've lost 7 games in a row now, something like that. It's really bad, but it does feel good to win. And the Broncos do feel like they're trending in the right direction. Offensive line, quarterback, playmakers, a lot of guys coming back healthy, money, cap. It's a good time.
That it is. And so this kind of brings me into, I wanted to ask you about one of your recent articles you wrote, because I think a lot of people just probably looked at the headline, were like, oh my gosh, how could this guy write something like this? And so I wanted to give you a chance just to kind of talk through this. You talked about that even though this is a really good offensive tackle draft coming up, that there is a really good chance that Garett Bolles will be the starting left tackle for the Broncos in 2020.
Week 1.
Week 1, yes.
I think that's an important caveat.
And
yeah,
I do. I think a lot of people are kind of going, how in the world could the Broncos go into another season with this guy? Because, I mean, you heard it in this last game. He got that one holding penalty and the entire crowd just started booing. And
yep, favorite ready to turn on him.
I saw one play that somebody highlighted on Twitter of how can you keep this guy in the lineup when I think it was Connor McGovern snapped the ball early, and so nobody was moving, but somehow it was Bolles' fault.
Yep.
And I'm just going, oh my gosh. Like, okay, I understand. He's had his problems, but let's not make something that's really not his problem become his problem. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give you a chance to just kind of talk through that idea and why that wouldn't be the worst thing ever for the Broncos.
Well, hopefully those dogs aren't barking too much. I'm about to go snap on them. But speaking of dogs barking, Garett Bolles can be a dog out there. And he is obviously has high-end traits, so he's a good athlete. He moves around. He can make some plays in the run game. But I feel like since the bye week specifically, things have started to turn around. He's hired a personal offensive line coach, so he's getting the extra work, which is interesting. I haven't heard much of that, but he's been playing better. The penalties are still an issue. The consistency is still an issue, but you can do much worse than Garett Bolles. Being completely honest, there are far more offensive line spots in this league than there are starting caliber offensive linemen. He's not expensive. He's still relatively young. He's been healthy, which, gosh, if you want to talk about anything and poop on anybody, and who knows about the extent, the specifics with Juwan James's knee, but Garett Bolles is out there. He's missed maybe a half of football in his career. When I think it was a Chargers game, he got carted off, and we thought it was going to be bad, and he actually ended up coming back the next week. But he's been playing better, and again, it's just the economics of the position, not only from what they can find on the market. And I hear people push Anthony Costanzo's market. Gosh, the Broncos are just as likely to sign Anthony Costanzo next offseason as they are Peyton Manning going to be the starting quarterback again. It's astronomically unlikely that that's going to happen. The Colts letting him walking first off, very unlikely. They have a lot of cap. And also the Broncos being able to sign him. I mean, he's going to reset the market, and he's going to be, God, he's older for an offensive tackle. It's not Andrew Whitworth old, but it does not seem likely or plausible. And with the Broncos winning, I think they have the 11th pick right now, and the way the draft is trending, Andrew Thomas, top 8 pick, Tristan Wirfs, top 8 pick, Jedrick Willis, top 10 pick. It's very possible that the plug-and-play offensive tackles aren't going to be there for the Broncos, and it's not economically viable to trade up in the top 10 for anything besides quarterback with what it costs to maneuver around in the top 10 these days. So really, it just comes down to the reality of it. You might not like it, but Garett Bolles might be the starting left tackle next year. And that doesn't mean that he needs to be, he's set plug and play, write him in Sharpie. No, he needs to be pushed. They need to add depth to the tackle. It's a class where I could see 10 offensive tackles going in the top 50. And Mike Munchak, if he has one that he likes, and the Broncos, take him in the second round, trade up back somewhere in day 2 to get one, or even trade up back into round 1 and get one, that's all a possibility. Especially because Juwan James and Garett Bolles could be free agents in 2021. But as it's looking right now with how he's playing, it's stabilizing a little bit. And obviously with better quarterback play, Dalton Reisner at left guard, it's been better. Needs to clean up things still, but it's been better. It just seems like it's not as much of this catastrophic, oh my gosh, if he sees the field, we're doomed, that many fans kind of portray in regards to Garett Bolles starting at left tackle at least week 1 next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, 8 weeks ago, I would have been sitting here pounding the table saying, how could you ever say something like this, Nick? But like
Broncos were like at the 5th overall pick.
Well, yeah, it's true. And so things have changed. And that's always the name of the game in the NFL, where things that 5 weeks ago seemed like such a certainty now are not a certainty. And so, like I said, we could do much worse than Garett Bolles. And you don't want to reach a point in the draft where you're reaching for a need and missing out on great talent, especially when the Broncos are trending in the right direction, but they still have a ton of holes on this roster.
Yes.
It's not just left tackle and all of a sudden they're Super Bowl contenders. That's not how this team is set up right now. So they have holes that, we just talked about it with needing another number 2 wide receiver, somebody that can really step up. And this is a good wide receiver class as well. Maybe good's not even good enough word. Great, outstanding wide receiver class. And so a group that you can go find somebody that's going to be a day 1 contributor for the team. Cornerback, obviously, defensive line. There's a lot of places you can look at and say, yep, Broncos definitely should upgrade that spot. And so again, if you get caught reaching, all you're doing is setting your team up for becoming that true 8-8, 7-9 kind of team, even when they maybe have found their quarterback because you haven't surrounded them with enough talent. So I'm with you. Sometimes you have to miss out on a position that you can see as a huge need. And sometimes because of past thoughts, it's hard to see the present of what a person is. And right now,
and with Garett Bolles, he showed it last year too, right? Like, how much can you trust him with he showed potential of turning around last year only to crash back to start this season. I just think it's as much economics of the position and a Munchak factor as well. And maybe Garett Bolles figuring out, hey, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get a big second contract. That's going to be a big difference for me in my life and my career and how I can set up my family. You see that if he hired an outside coach from the organization, that's an interesting deal. And it's the former Cincinnati offensive coordinator who's been in the league for years. His father was in the league for years as well. So it's obviously you can't just go in with Garett Bolles and Juwan James next year. You need to bring in talent to the offensive tackle position in the first 100 picks. But that's as much about beyond 2020, 2021 plus as anything else. And also taking advantage of a talent evaluator / developer in Mike Munchak and, listening to him and taking advantage of having that guy in the room. But for 2020, week 1, unless something crazy happens where you have an injury or something with the law, I just think it's more and more likely by the day that Garett Bolles is the starter because he's playing more like an average left tackle than he is a total detriment, get him off the field left tackle.
Right.
And that's valuable for a rookie contract.
Right. No, I agree. And like I said, I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about that on here because there are a lot of people, I think they just see the headline and just go, oh my goodness, Nick has lost it. And
so many people are gosh darn not allowing any sort of variance or nuance in anything. They're either the best of all time or they are the worst and need to be shot. Maybe that's a little extreme, but like there's a scale here. There's a spectrum to where a player lands, and it's not always the same week by week. So that's something I think people just need to understand, that you have to allow some wiggle room in your analysis and what you see on him. It's just like the team does. It's not cut and paste. It's not black and white, and you have to look at it that way. Otherwise, you paint yourself into a corner where even if he's playing better, you've already decided that nope, it's over. We're done with him. And he's already under contract for cheap next year. So it's just you got to allow some nuance.
Right. Well, and that brings me then to my next question here for you, Drew Lock, because there's a lot of people who were pretty upset when the Broncos drafted him. And we're like, this guy was terrible in college. How could he ever be a success in the NFL? And I guess for me, I liked Luck, but there was obvious things that you saw that were struggles for him in college. And there's still some struggles here in the NFL. But I guess I wanted to talk to you a little bit about maybe what are some things that you see different about him after, this time that he's had off and time to grow and things like that maybe you didn't see in college, or maybe he wasn't even given the chance to show in college, that maybe he's showing now, that give you some hope for the future that he's going to develop into a true starting caliber quarterback in the NFL?
Well, I do got to say, I think his mechanics are trending in the right direction, which has me excited. His footwork has been cleaner and quieter. It's still not perfect, but that's something that, you listen to anybody talk about Drew Brees, and he's somebody who's constantly working and trying to perfect his footwork today. Does Drew Brees have issues with his footwork? Nobody would say that, but it's something that Drew Lock specifically needs to continue to work on. So I think he's cleaned up that. I think the arm is coming out better, and I'm surprised. I think his processing has been better than I thought it would be. Going from read to read, making the right decisions, getting the ball out quickly. You still see some of that gunslinger stuff in him, but I think he's making pretty good decisions and making quick decisions as well. So really, I don't have too much to complain about considering what we thought. The whole process is still a work in progress, and it's still a small sample size. We're going to need to see more. Teams are going to get more tape on him. There's going to be some ebb and flow to him. Last year at this point, everybody was hyping up the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield, and we saw some crashing back to the ground this season. That can happen. But I think the tools, the traits, and also just how the players around him are responding to his personality, his leadership, his work ethic, his drive, just who he is, I think that really matters a lot. That's something I hadn't put in enough credit before in my past analysis to these players. So all of that combined with the tools, the upside, it's an exciting trajectory for Drew Lock, and who knows what the ceiling is or how far he could take this team.
Something I wanted to mention, and I heard, I think it was Joel Klatt was talking about this. They were interviewing him about what he's seen from Drew Lock, and he said one thing that he's shown that he'd never shown in college, or at least very rarely showed in college, is his ability to throw with anticipation. That there's been a lot of throws that he's made before the players made their break, before they were actually open, and throwing to a spot more so than waiting for a receiver to break open and then throwing it to him. Now, he still does that some, because he still has that strong arm that can get it there without a guy having to, without anticipation needed in the throw. But there's still been some other throws. There's a couple, especially, when you're throwing against zone coverage, you have to throw to a spot. You can't wait for a guy to break open, because then he's going to break into the next zone by the time you actually get the ball there. And there's a lot of throws. There's a couple of those big time crossers, especially to Hamilton, that I thought he did such a great job, where Hamilton was not open when he threw it. And he threw it to the spot where Hamilton would break open. And so that's what gives me a lot of hope, is that you're seeing him really understand what he's supposed to be doing with the football, and understanding that there's a huge difference, obviously, from college to the NFL. College quarterbacks can wait for a guy to break open. And especially when you have an arm like Lock, you don't have to actually throw with anticipation. Where NFL, it doesn't matter how strong your arm is, you still have to have some anticipation. Unless your name is Patrick Mahomes, then it doesn't really matter. But no, it's still, I do. I think he is really trending in the right direction. He's showing a lot of growth compared to even what he showed in college. And it's nice to hear how much the players, the coaches, everybody seems to be rallying around this kid, really believing in what he's doing on the field. I was reading an article earlier today where they had interviewed some of the coaches, and they weren't naming the coaches, but they said that they had said Lock is so much further advanced than we thought he would be. They said we had high expectations for him, but he's even advanced past those. And so again, when you're hearing some of those kind of things, it does give you a lot of hope for the future. It's not proven completely yet, but the fact that he's come in and that the offense is already averaging a touchdown more per game, that just shows how much of a difference he makes, just having him in the roster, in the lineup, compared to any of the other guys the Broncos have shown.
Yeah, the future is bright. And again, like I said, growth is not a linear line. It's not going to be constantly getting better. It's going to have ups and downs. It's going to be a little bit more wavy. But it does feel like this team, at least for 2020, has a quarterback that they can build around and give them a real shot for the playoffs next year if they can crush another offseason and continue to develop the players they already have with a good coaching staff and scheme on both sides of the ball. So It's exciting, man. We've talked about it on here. I feel like it's been the point of emphasis, and we've had pushback, but it really, not to be all taking a victory lap and some confirmation bias, but unless you have that quarterback, you're not doing anything in the NFL. And the Broncos just simply haven't had that level of quarterback. And it's baseline. There's obviously different levels of how good that quarterback can be and the roster around them and building around them. Patrick Mahomes, he can put him on any team. He's going to be great. You put Lamar Jackson in a under center offense where it's going to be more wide receiver touch throws to the outside, probably not as good. There's different levels there, but this team under lock, they have a chance to really, like we talked about, who knows what the ceiling is, who knows how good he can be, but who knows how good this team can be around him, at least for the next 3 years. So windows opening up. Chiefs are in some cap trouble. They're going to have to pay Mahomes soon. Phillip Rivers is going to be, I don't think that Chargers team is going to be competing right now. They're about to go into quarterback purgatory if they're not already there. And Derek Carr and the Raiders doesn't seem like a happy marriage. The Raiders do have some draft capital. They can do some stuff, but really, This team, outside of the Chiefs, because they obviously have Patrick Mahomes, this team really could make some noise in the AFC West if Locke can continue to progress and they build the team up correctly using the resources and develop the guys properly. So, again, I'm not here to blow smoke up your rear end. It's not the Christmas spirit coming from me right now. I'm typically a realist bordering on semi-pessimist because I want to be shown. I'm a scientist, prove it to me. So I think this team, I'm excited about the direction, and it all starts because they have a quarterback that can at least get them over that level, and who knows how much further. So, all right, well, we're going to take one more break here talking about the Broncos-Lions game. We're going to shift gears, but don't go anywhere. This is the Building the Broncos podcast.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler, and we're going to do something. You guys are going to be getting this on... Gosh, I guess you're going to be getting it on Christmas Day. We're recording both episodes on Monday because, if you guys didn't know, Carl's a preacher. So he's going to be a little bit busy with the holiday time, and I'm going to be up and around and traveling. So it's already just a little bit of a chaos on both ends. So we're recording both today, but a little bit of fun on here since it is Christmas. Carl and I are going to do a top Christmas movie draft. I told my dad about this yesterday. He about peed himself. He wanted to be in the draft room. He was going to be whispering in me. He was going to talk about Big Board last night. So I told him, Dad, it needs to be me. That's not fair. He's Mr. Christmas. That would be an unfair advantage. So this is going to be all me and Carl also. And I think the best bet here is to start it as so whoever gets the first pick, obviously gets the first pick. The next person gets to pick 2 and 3. And then after that, we just go back and forth until we have our top 5. Does that seem fair?
Yeah. No, that works for me. I did want to ask a couple questions here. Okay. So are we doing specific, like they have to be specific Christmas movies? Or, because, a lot of people debate back and forth Die Hard.
I think, Carl, you can do whatever your heart tells you.
Okay.
It's Christmas. That's what it's all about.
Okay. That
so
sounds...
if you feel Die Hard in your heart of hearts, then that's fine.
Okay.
So I don't want to give or take anything from you. Carl, I got a coin right here. Let me see if I can get it. Okay. Heads or tails for the first pick. Or you get to choose if you want the first pick or the second and third pick. So I'm going to toss it up.
I'll take tails.
Right now? You'll take tails. Okay. It was tails. So do you want the first pick or second and third pick?
I'll go second and third.
Alrighty. Nick is on the clock. He is going to take his favorite Christmas movie, Elf. It is, I know it's a newer Christmas movie, but I am sorry, it is timeless. Will Ferrell is unbelievable in that movie. The quotes, my family has them year-round. We actually literally just had an Elf party last night. We were in full Elf costumes. We watched the movie. We always have, like lasagna, we sang Christmas carols. My family's a little bit odd. We're very extra for Christmas, but I absolutely adore Elf, and it's one that I think is going to stand the test of time. So maybe not the most classic one out there, but I had to take it. I think it's too much of an explosive playmaker. It's generational in my opinion, and it's got staying power. So it's like taking the quarterback first. I think Elf is the way to go with my first pick here.
Well, I took the chance that would be your choice.
Okay.
I just seeing your pictures of you all dressed up as elves made me think, okay, he's got to take that, right? So that you didn't take my number one pick, thankfully. I have to go National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Okay, that was very high on my board as well.
Okay,
so that one's great.
This is a have to watch movie every Christmas for me. Maybe sometimes 2 or 3 times. My wife hates it. She hates those movies of people like having bad things happen to them and laughing about it. But that's
slapstick.
Yeah, for me that's what I grew up with. I mean, my family, somebody got hurt. Oh, you're missing a finger? Let's laugh at you. That's what I had growing up. No, I'm not missing a finger, but I mean, I did miss some teeth, and my dad came home and pretty much made a bunch of jokes at my expense. So, yeah, I can't pass up that one. Just so many classic moments in that movie that just make it so good. All right, so I have a question here for my next pick. Are we doing, like, say it's a series. Do you get the entire series, or do you have to pick one from the series?
I think you have to pick one.
All right.
Because there's multiple National Lampoons, and that would honestly bring down your total, because the Christmas Vacation 2, where they go off to the island or whatever, is absolutely horrible.
That's true. All right, so I'm trying to pick between Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2 here.
Both great.
Yes. I think I'm actually going to go Home Alone 2. I found that one to be just a little bit funnier. The scene, the one that gets me every time, that I just have to like pause it because I'm laughing so hard, is when he grabs a hold of the sink that's connected to jumper cables. And he's getting electrocuted to the point where they show his skeleton.
You see his skeleton.
That screaming, that high-pitched scream just gets me every single time. So I'm going to have to go Home Alone 2 for my next pick here.
Alrighty, so Carl's going on very much for the slapstick. The physical, silly pain.
Yes, very much so.
Really going there. I'm going to go back. You know, this is like taking an offensive lineman at this point in the draft. I got to compliment my more recent pick, Elf. I'm going to go It's a Wonderful Life. I think it is one of the most – that one is another one obviously going to stand the test of time. I think the humor in it, the storyline holds up. I mean, there's been so many spoofs of that storyline. It's so unique. It's got such a great message. I mean, Frank Capra is incredible. Jimmy Stewart, I mean, just incredible. It's so good. George Bailey, and I would be probably divorced if I didn't pick it at this point, because it is my wife's favorite movie overall over anything. So I'm going to go It's a Wonderful Life. It's too incredible.
Okay. Not a bad choice. Not my cup of tea, but I can understand. Okay. My wife would be in agreement with yours that she has to watch that every year.
I mean, the end scene when all the friends come in and they start singing Old Lang Syne, I won't lie to you, I tear up every time. Like it's that's a powerful movie. So you are on the clock again, sir.
No, you get 2 in a row, right?
Nope. It was to make up for the first overall pick.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I will go. I'll go Die Hard.
Oh wow!
I mean, there's 3 movies or 3 series that I have to watch every Christmas. Home Alone series. I guess there's 4 series. Sorry, Home Alone. Obviously, National Lampoons, Star Wars, and Die Hard. Those are the 4 series I watch every single Christmas season. And I will say, though, I have not watched Die Hard yet. So it is on my list to watch today at some point.
Okay, better get on it. All right, well, so you have 3 right now: Christmas Vacation, Home Alone 2, and Die Hard.
Yes.
I have Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, and my next pick, A Christmas Story. Little Ralphie, shoot his eye out again. Really playing for the nostalgia factor here, but I grew up in a very crazy Christmas household, and Little Ralphie in that one, and wanting the Red Ryder BB gun, and they don't even have, you know what the credits when they say the family members and everything you know what they say the dad's name is?
What?
It's just Old Man. They never say, just a classic. I think it's The Old Man even. So it's a really good one, and really just kind of captures a feeling of Christmas as a youth. I just think that it hold on to that one. So I absolutely love that one. And did you know that Little Ralphie is the head elf, not the Master Tinker, but the head elf in Elf as well. So he's in both those Christmas movies. So I'm really stacking the deck there. So a little Christmas tidbit. So for the fans there to, just show that I've really put some thought and time into this. I've been born for this draft. So you're on the clock again, Carl, with your 4th pick.
All right. Oh man. I guess since I already said I got to get Home Alone in there too. Man.
Okay. This is like going with wide receivers and multiple of your early picks.
Well,
you're not diversifying the portfolio.
I am
really
not.
Hammering that strength.
I figure I've already said I have to watch it every year. So how could I not have it on my list if it's something I have to watch every year? I just, again, Macaulay Culkin, hilarious. I mean, he fit that role just perfect. Home Alone 3, when it came out, I'm just going, man, why did you have to ruin such a great series to put something like that out there? And, but no, Home Alone, perfect setup. I mean, what kid after watching that didn't think about how am I going to protect my home? I mean, I made drawings of what I needed to do to set up my house. And I had like perfect setup. I had one of those, my house growing up, one of those, doors that would open up to the basement that you'd throw wood through.
Okay.
Like that was the old setup. It would go into this big cellar. And so like I had the perfect setup of being able to like get out of the basement if I needed to in a really fancy way, or get into the basement if I needed to, or I could have them have to slide in and slide into something that they shouldn't have. I mean, it was just, like I said, I had this all planned out of how I would protect my home. And, Macaulay Culkin, he inspired me to be that man.
All right. Well, moving right along now, I'm going to go with Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. A lot of the scenes and the dialogue are actually improvised from Jim Carrey, and he's just odd and weird enough that he can really pull it off. And it's one of my favorites. We have to watch it every year. Again, one of my wife's favorites as well. But I really enjoy the humor in it, and I think it's funny, and Jim Carrey pulls it off. So that's one of my favorites. I got to go with the Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Okay. Does that leave us?
So one more here.
Each of us one more.
One more.
Oh, man. So you're probably going to really disagree with mine because you just stole the one I was going to pick.
Okay, good. That's what I want to hear.
But I have to go with Turbo Man Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jingle All the Way.
Jingle All the Way. Okay.
I love, again, I mean, it's that slapstick comedy for me, and seeing Arnold in that role, I mean, it's just funny to see him in a comedy role and trying to be funny. I don't know, it gets me every time to see him do the turbo time and just try to do the voices and everything else. It's hard to beat that for me. I love it. And I realized that the kid from that movie is also Anakin in Star Wars Episode 1.
Yes. Yep. So the acting is not great.
No, not one bit.
Sorry to talk.
Oh, it's not. Like I said, it's just complete for the comedy of watching Arnold just be an idiot on the big screen.
Alrighty, so last pick on here for me. I went back and forth between a couple, and I won't lie to you, my heart tells me one thing, but I'm going for more mass appeal here. So I was between White Christmas with Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby, classic, great one, and also Bill Murray's Scrooged. I feel like more people are going to be into the Scrooged pick. I mean, it's hilarious. Bill Murray is great in that. So I'm going Scrooged here. It's funny, watched every year, and really just a kind of a fun take on Dickens' Christmas Carol. I also thought about the Muppets Christmas because that one, yes,
man, I forgot about that one.
Oh man, that's a great one. And gosh, it's who's the Batman butler? The famous British actor Michael Caine. Michael Caine even. So like it's a great one. Michael Caine as Scrooge is probably one of my favorite roles of him in the gosh darn Muppets. How silly is that? But he's a great one. I thought about those ones, but in the end, I'm going to go with Scrooge because Bill Murray is beloved. So, and it's a great one. So we'll read them out here. My picks here, I have Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, A Christmas Story, Jim Carrey's Grinch, and Scrooged. Carl has Christmas Vacation, Home Alone 2, Die Hard, Home Alone 1, and Jingle All the Way. I think we will put these up on Twitter on Christmas Day just to kind of see what the people have to say about our selections here. I won't put our names next to them, Carl, but we'll remove bias as much as we can.
Okay. I'm guessing your list probably reaches a larger group because mine's very comedy-centered. Other than
a little
Die
more
Hard.
Stooges.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess you're going to win, but I'll take my list any day of the year. I mean, those are movies that I'll watch not even just around Christmas. So I love them. And I like your list too. Don't get me wrong. I think you have a lot of good ones there, but I like to laugh. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I got to stick with my list.
I think the one on my list that out of all these that make me laugh the most is Elf. So that's why it was the number one overall pick. It's a flashy one.
It would have made my list if you didn't pick it.
Yeah, too good. Did you know they were going to have Jim Carrey do that, but he turned it down? How times would have been different.
What an idiot.
Yeah, right. All right, well, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.